I'll start by giving you some context about my marriage. My wife, Emily, and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We were the couple everyone envied, college sweethearts who seemed destined for a fairy tale ending. At least that's what I thought. Things began to change about 6 months ago. Emily became distant. It wasn't obvious at first, just little things. She stopped asking about my day. She started working late more often and taking phone calls in a hushed voice. When I asked, she brushed it off. It's just work. You know how it is. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was a marketing manager, after all. Long hours and demanding clients came with the job. But the excuses kept piling up. One night, she said she had a late meeting downtown. But when I called her at 9 p.m., it went straight to voicemail. She didn't get home until almost midnight, smelling faintly of someone else's cologne. The next morning, I asked her about it. She laughed it off, saying she and her colleagues had grabbed drinks after the meeting. One of the guys spilled his drink on me. That's probably what you're smelling. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the signs kept coming. She changed the password on her phone, something she'd never done before. When I asked why, she snapped, "Do you think I'm hiding something? Jesus, Matt, can I have some privacy?" And then there were the gym sessions. Emily had always been fit, but she suddenly started going every single evening for hours. She bought new workout clothes, new sneakers, even a fancy water bottle. I joked about her becoming a fitness junkie, and she just rolled her eyes. It wasn't until I accidentally overheard a conversation that my suspicions began to crystallize. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Emily was in the kitchen, talking to someone on the phone. She didn't hear me walk in. "Yeah, I know, I miss you too," she said in a low, intimate tone. There was a pause. "No, not tonight. He's home." My stomach dropped. I coughed loudly, making my presence known. Emily jumped like she'd been caught stealing, fumbling with her phone before hanging up abruptly. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Her answer came too quickly. "Just a client. They're stressing about a deadline." She avoided my eyes as she spoke, busying herself with the dishes. I didn't push. I didn't accuse. But in that moment, something in me shifted. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure if I could trust her. And so, I decided to find out the truth. Once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew faster than I ever thought possible. Every little thing Emily did or didn't do fueled my suspicions. But I didn't want to accuse her without proof. If I was wrong, I'd risk destroying our marriage over nothing. So I started paying attention. I began with her phone. She'd been keeping it close to her, never leaving it lying around like she used to. When she showered, she'd take it into the bathroom instead of leaving it on the nightstand. That was new. But one evening, she made the mistake of leaving it on the counter while she ran upstairs to grab something. My heart pounded as I reached for it, my fingers trembling. I knew her old password. It was my birthday, but she'd changed it weeks ago. Out of desperation, I tried her work anniversary, then her mother's birthday. Nothing. That alone was a red flag. Emily was a creature of habit. She never used complicated passwords. She didn't think they were necessary. Yet now, here I was, locked out of her phone like a stranger. I told myself I needed to try something else. If she was hiding something, it wouldn't just be on her phone. It might be on her laptop. She rarely used it at home, claiming her work was all on her office computer. But that didn't stop me from looking. When she went to her Saturday morning yoga class, a new ritual she'd picked up recently, I opened her laptop and logged in. She hadn't bothered to change the password. Relief flooded me when the screen unlocked, but it didn't last long. Her browser history was clean. Too clean. She'd been deleting it regularly. My chest tightened as I realized how deliberate this had to be. But one mistake stood out. A tab left open in a private browser. It was an email, one I didn't recognize. The username wasn't hers. It was some generic Gmail address. I hesitated for a second, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on it. The inbox opened, and what I saw made my stomach churn. Dozens of emails, all from someone named Jake. Some were short, Little notes like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," or "Last night was incredible." Others were longer, more personal. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, reading things I couldn't unread. One email in particular stopped me cold. It was dated last week. "Emily, I can't keep sneaking around like this. I want more. When are you going to tell him? You said you'd talk to him after the last trip. But here we are again. I'm starting to think you never will. Jake." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. This wasn't just some flirtation. This was a full-blown affair. And she'd been lying to my face for who knows how long. When she came home from yoga that day, I couldn't even look at her. She kissed me on the cheek, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I knew I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. I couldn't confront Emily just yet. Not until I had something undeniable. Something she couldn't gaslight or dismiss as paranoia. The emails were damning, but I needed more. I needed to see her betrayal with my own eyes. That's when I decided to set up surveillance. It felt wrong, sneaky, and invasive, but she'd already broken our vows. My actions, I told myself, were justified. So I did some research. Within a few hours, I'd ordered a discreet security camera that could sync with my phone. It was tiny enough to hide in plain sight, and it had excellent audio and video quality. When the package arrived 2 days later, I set it up in our living room. It blended seamlessly with the decor, looking like just another piece of tech. I adjusted the angle to capture the main seating area and doorway, then tested it out. The footage streamed perfectly to my phone. The first night I monitored the camera, I felt like a spy in my own home. Emily was acting normal, or what passed for normal these days. She spent most of the evening on her laptop, occasionally glancing at her phone and smirking at whatever was on the screen. "Who are you texting?" I asked casually, trying to sound uninterested. "Oh, just the girls," she replied without looking up. "We're planning a wine night next week." I nodded, biting back the urge to call her out. "The girls. Sure." Over the next few days, I checked the footage religiously. Most of the time, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Just Emily working, watching TV, or heading to bed. But then came Thursday night. I was at my friend Mike's house for a beer, trying to act like everything was fine. My phone buzzed with a motion alert from the camera. I opened the app, expecting to see Emily lounging on the couch. Instead, I saw her pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "I know, Jake. I miss you too," she said, her voice soft but clear. My chest tightened as I turned up the volume. "No, I can't tonight. He'll be home soon." "Tomorrow?" "Yeah, I can make that work. Same place." She hung up and stared at the floor, a small smile playing on her lips. Then she walked upstairs, completely unaware that I had heard every word. I sat there in Mike's living room, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. I could feel his eyes on me, concerned. "You good, man?" he asked. I forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah, just work stuff." But inside I was anything but good. I had a name, Jake, and I knew she was meeting him tomorrow. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with possibilities. Would she lie to my face again about where she was going? Would she even bother making an excuse? Either way, I planned to follow her. I wanted to catch her in the act. The next morning, Emily was in a chipper mood, humming to herself as she made coffee. Her lightheartedness was a cruel contrast to the weight sitting heavy in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder if her happiness came from the thought of seeing him later. "Big plans today?" I asked, feigning casual curiosity as I grabbed my own coffee. She paused for just a second before answering. "Just the usual. Work, gym, and maybe a quick grocery run. Do you need anything?" Her lie was seamless, delivered with a smile so convincing it almost made me doubt what I'd heard the night before. Almost. "Nope, I'm good," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I'll probably work late tonight. Big deadline." She didn't seem to notice the edge in my voice. "Okay, don't work too hard," she said, kissing me on the cheek before leaving the house. The moment the door closed, I sprang into action. I had already installed a tracking app on her phone a few days earlier, something I wasn't proud of, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I pulled up the app, watching as the little dot representing Emily moved toward her office. I spent the rest of the day alternating between work and obsessively checking the tracker. Around 5:30 p.m., the dot shifted. She was on the move, not toward the gym or the grocery store, but to a part of town we never went to, one known for its seedy motels and dimly lit bars. My hands trembled as I grabbed my keys and followed her. It wasn't hard to stay out of sight. She didn't seem worried about being followed, probably because she thought I was still at work. I trailed her car to a small motel with a flickering neon sign. My heart pounded as I watched her park, step out, and walk toward one of the rooms. A man was waiting at the door, tall, with dark hair and a cocky grin. Jake. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her like he'd been starving for it. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Seeing it with my own eyes was so much worse than I'd imagined. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen. I didn't know whether to storm in and confront them or drive away and pretend I hadn't seen it. But I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos from the car. Grainy but clear enough to show who they were. Evidence. Then I waited. About an hour later, they emerged from the room, laughing and holding hands. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. As they kissed goodbye, I snapped one more picture. This was it. I had everything I needed. When I got home, Emily was already there, sitting on the couch with her laptop, looking as though she hadn't just ripped my heart out and stomped on it. "Hey, you're home early," she said, glancing up with that same warm smile. I forced myself to meet her eyes. Yeah, I got everything done faster than I thought. I couldn't confront her yet. Not tonight. Not when I was still too raw, too angry. If I did, I might lose control, and I needed to stay calm to execute what I had in mind. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, her lies would come crashing down around her. The next morning, I woke up early, fueled by a mix of anger and anticipation. Emily was still asleep, her face serene as if she hadn't just spent the evening with another man. Looking at her now, I felt a wave of disgust. How could she pretend so flawlessly? How could she lie to me and then sleep so soundly in the bed we shared? I couldn't wait any longer. "Emily," I said, my voice low but firm. She stirred, groaning softly before opening her eyes. What's going on?" "We need to talk," I said, standing at the foot of the bed, my arms crossed. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "About what?" "The 6 a.m., Matt. Can it wait?" "No, it can't." The tone of my voice must have tipped her off, because her expression shifted, guarded, wary. "What's wrong?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Without a word, I opened the photos I'd taken the night before and handed it to her. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the images. I saw the exact moment she realized there was no denying it. Her face went pale, and her mouth opened and closed like she was struggling to form words. What is this?" she finally stammered. "You tell me," I said, my voice cold. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with fake tears. "Matt, it's not what it looks like. Don't." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence. I heard you on the phone. I followed you. I saw you with him. I know everything." Her mouth snapped shut, and for a moment, she just stared at me. Then, as if flipping a switch, she went on the offensive. "So you were spying on me?" she snapped, her voice rising. "That's insane, Matt. Do you even hear yourself? You've been stalking me." I laughed bitterly. "Spying? Stalking? Is that the best you've got? I wouldn't have had to if you weren't sneaking around like a coward." Her face twisted with anger, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. She was scrambling for control, for a way to turn this around on me. "Okay, fine," she said finally, throwing up her hands. "Yes, I've been seeing someone. But can you blame me? You've been so distant lately, so obsessed with work. I needed someone who actually pays attention to me." Her words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I felt the sting of guilt. But then I remembered the emails, the phone calls, the lies. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Don't put this on me. I wasn't distant. I was trying to support us, to build a life for us." But apparently, that wasn't good enough for you. Her face crumpled, and the tears finally spilled over. Matt, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. Stop, I said, cutting her off again. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your excuses. I want the truth. She looked at me, her lip trembling. What do you want to know? Everything, I said. How long has this been going on? How many lies have you told me? And who the hell is Jake? She hesitated, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she sighed, as if resigned. It's been a few months, she admitted. We met at a work event. He's a client. A client, I repeated, disgusted. Jesus, Emily. Do you even realize how pathetic that sounds? She flinched but didn't respond. Here's what's going to happen, I said, stepping closer. You're going to pack your things and get out of this house. Today. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. And don't think for a second that this is over. You're going to pay for what you've done. Her tears turned into anger. You can't just kick me out, Matt. This is my house too. Not anymore, I said, my voice deadly calm. You made your choice when you decided to sleep with someone else. Now you get to live with the consequences. Her face twisted with rage, but she didn't argue. She must have seen the finality in my expression. Without another word, she got up and stormed out of the room. I stood there for a long time after she left, staring at the empty bed and feeling the weight of what had just happened. This was only the beginning. After Emily stormed out of the bedroom, I felt an eerie calm wash over me. The raw anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but my mind was focused now. She thought this was just about her leaving. She thought she'd cry her crocodile tears, pack her things, and move on to her client. She had no idea what was coming. I spent the rest of the morning gathering everything I needed. First, I forwarded the incriminating photos to a private folder in my email, along with copies of the emails I'd found earlier. Then I backed up all the footage from the hidden camera, ensuring I had irrefutable evidence of her lies and deceit. Next, I reached out to a divorce attorney. I wasn't looking for some run-of-the-mill family lawyer. I wanted someone ruthless, someone who would tear Emily apart in court. After a few phone calls, I found the perfect match. A woman named Caroline Stokes, infamous in our city for her aggressive approach to infidelity cases. When I explained the situation, Caroline didn't even flinch. You've got the evidence, she said, her voice sharp and professional. We'll file for adultery, and I'll make sure she walks away with nothing but the clothes on her back. I felt a grim satisfaction at her words, but I wasn't done yet. Emily still hadn't left the house. She'd locked herself in the guest room, probably waiting for me to cool down so she could try another round of manipulation. I wasn't giving her that chance. I decided to pay a visit to Jake. Tracking him down wasn't hard. Emily had left just enough breadcrumbs in those emails to give me an idea of where he worked. I drove across town to a sleek corporate building, my hands tightening on the wheel as I pulled into the parking lot. I didn't bother with subtlety. I walked straight up to the receptionist and asked for him by name. I'm sorry, Mr. Dawson is in a meeting, she said, flashing me a polite smile. Tell him it's about Emily. He'll want to take this. Her smile faltered, but she nodded and picked up the phone. A few minutes later, Jake appeared in the lobby, looking every bit as smug as I'd imagined. He was tall, well-dressed, and oozing arrogance. You must be Matt, he said, extending a hand. I ignored it. We need to talk. Now. His smirk faded as he led me into a side conference room. The moment the door closed, I laid it all out. You've been sleeping with my wife, I said, my voice steady but cold. I know everything. And if you think this is just between the three of us, think again. He had the audacity to look annoyed. Look, man, I get that you're upset. Upset, I snapped, cutting him off. I'm not upset. I'm done. You want Emily? Fine. But you're going to regret it. I pulled out my phone and played one of the videos from the hidden camera. His face paled as he realized just how much I knew. Here's how this is going to go, I continued. I've already sent this to my attorney. If you try to interfere with my divorce or if Emily gets any ideas about playing victim, this goes public. Your boss, your clients, everyone sees it. Do you understand me? He nodded, his confidence shattered. Good. Now get out of my sight. As I left the building, I felt a sense of control I hadn't felt in weeks. Emily and Jake thought they could humiliate me, but they had underestimated just how far I was willing to go. When I got home, Emily was still in the guest room. I knocked once, then opened the door. "It's time for you to leave," I said, tossing a suitcase onto the bed. "I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here another night." She stared at me, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. "You can't just throw me out like this." "I can, and I am," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll hear from her soon. Until then, don't contact me." For the first time, Emily looked genuinely afraid. She knew she'd lost control of the narrative. As she packed her things, I watched her silently, my mind racing with plans for what came next. This wasn't just about kicking her out. This was about making sure she and Jake paid for their betrayal in full. Emily left the house that evening, dragging her suitcases with her head held high. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She just glared at me like I was the villain in her story. Good. Let her think that. Let her believe she could still spin this in her favor. The moment she drove off, I called her family. Emily's parents, Diane and Roger, had always been kind to me, treating me like the son they never had. I knew they would side with her out of obligation, but they deserved to know the truth. "Hi, Diane, it's Matt," I said when she picked up. "I thought you should know Emily moved out tonight. Things have been difficult." "Oh my God. Matt, what happened?" Diane asked, her voice filled with concern. I hesitated, then said, "She's been having an affair." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What?" Diane finally whispered. "Are you sure?" "I have proof," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Emails, photos, video evidence. She's been seeing someone named Jake for months. I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you deserve to know the truth before she starts spinning her version of events." Roger took the phone from Diane, his voice gruff and angry. "She what? That ungrateful girl. After everything you've done for her." I could hear Diane crying in the background as Roger apologized profusely, promising they would talk to her and try to knock some sense into her. "She's your daughter," I said firmly, "but she's not welcome in my life anymore. I just wanted you to know why." After hanging up, I sent them a carefully curated folder of the evidence. If Emily tried to claim I was the bad guy, they would know the truth. But I wasn't done yet. The next step was contacting Jake's wife. I hadn't forgotten about her. Her name was Melanie, and I tracked her down through social media. I messaged her, keeping it brief. "Hi Melanie, I'm Matt, Emily's husband. I hate to bring this to your attention, but I believe your husband, Jake, has been having an affair with my wife. I have evidence and can share it with you if you'd like. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed." It didn't take long for her to respond. "What are you talking about? My Jake?" I sent her one of the photos, a damning one of Jake and Emily kissing outside the motel. She called me within minutes, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. "I followed them last night," I said. "I've got more emails, video footage. I'm sorry to drop this on you, but you deserve to know." Melanie was silent for a long moment, then said, "Send me everything, every last bit." I forwarded her the evidence and waited. An hour later, she messaged me again. "Thank you. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." Her decision fueled my resolve. Jake wasn't just losing his affair partner, he was losing everything. The fallout was immediate. By the end of the week, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jake had been suspended from his job, pending an internal investigation. Apparently, Melanie had sent the evidence to his boss. Emily, on the other hand, was scrambling. She moved in with a friend and started calling me nonstop, leaving voicemails begging to talk. I ignored them all. By Friday, I received an email from my lawyer. Caroline had already filed the divorce papers, complete with all the evidence we'd gathered. Emily would be served within days. This wasn't over yet, but the dominoes were falling exactly as I planned. By the time Emily was served with the divorce papers, the whispers had already started. Our social circle wasn't enormous, but it was tight-knit, and word spread quickly. I hadn't told many people, just a few close friends, but someone must have let it slip. I didn't mind. The truth deserved to come out. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to think she could control the narrative. I found out through mutual friends that she was telling people we'd grown apart, and that the divorce was a mutual decision. The audacity of it made my blood boil. So I decided to set the record straight. That weekend, I invited a few friends over for a barbecue, just a casual get-together. The mood was light, everyone laughing and catching up. Then, as we sat around the fire pit, someone asked the inevitable question. "So, Matt, what's going on with you and Emily?" I paused, looking around at the familiar faces. These were people who had been a part of our lives for years. They deserved to know the truth. "She cheated on me," I said bluntly. The group fell silent. "With who?" someone asked hesitantly. "Some guy named Jake," I replied, my voice steady. "He's married, too." I found emails, photos, even followed her to a motel one night. It's been going on for months. The reactions ranged from shocked gasps to muttered curses. One friend, Sarah, shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe it. Emily always acted so perfect, like your marriage was untouchable." "Well, it wasn't," I said, forcing a bitter smile. "But she's learning the hard way that actions have consequences." By the end of the night, everyone there knew the full story, and, as I expected, they spread the word. The next few days were a whirlwind. People started reaching out, some offering support, others digging for gossip. A few mutual friends even messaged me screenshots of Emily's desperate attempts to justify herself. "It wasn't what it looked like," she had written in one group chat. "Matt is exaggerating. He's just angry and trying to make me look bad." But the evidence spoke for itself. I made sure of that. The real bombshell came when Melanie, Jake's wife, decided to take matters into her own hands. She posted a lengthy message on social media, detailing the affair and tagging both Jake and Emily. "For anyone who's wondering why I'm filing for divorce, here's the reason," she wrote. Attached were several of the photos I'd sent her, along with a scathing caption. "Jake and Emily thought they could destroy 2 marriages and get away with it. They were wrong." The post exploded. Within hours, it had hundreds of likes, comments, and shares. People were furious, disgusted, and, of course, fascinated by the drama. Emily called me that night, her voice frantic. "Matt, what the hell is going on? Melanie posted pictures of us. My boss saw it. People at work are talking about me." "Good," I said coldly. "You deserve every bit of it." "Do you have any idea what this is doing to me?" she shouted. "Oh, I have a pretty good idea," I replied. "It's called consequences, Emily. Welcome to them." She tried to argue, to guilt me into sympathizing, but I hung up before she could finish. The fallout from Melanie's post was immense. Jake lost his job and Emily was put on probation at hers. Their reputations were in tatters, and neither of them could show their faces in public without getting side-eyed or whispered about. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. With their reputations in shambles, the next step was ensuring Emily felt the full weight of her betrayal where it hurt the most, her wallet. My lawyer, Caroline, had been meticulously gathering evidence, building a rock-solid case to ensure that Emily walked away with as little as possible. "Adultery cases like this are a gift," Caroline told me during one of our meetings. "Judges don't take kindly to cheaters, especially when the evidence is this overwhelming. We're going to make sure she regrets every lie she ever told you." First, we froze our joint bank accounts. Emily wasn't expecting that. She'd been using those accounts to cover her living expenses since moving out, likely assuming she could milk them indefinitely. When she tried to withdraw money and found out she couldn't, the angry text messages started pouring in. "Emily, what the hell, Matt? I can't access my account. How am I supposed to pay rent?" "Me, That's not my problem. Ask Jake. She tried calling me, but I ignored her. Every message she sent only strengthened my resolve. The next step was dividing assets. Caroline had done her homework, identifying everything we owned, bank accounts, retirement funds, even Emily's car, which I had paid for. She's not entitled to half, Caroline explained. Given the circumstances, we can argue that her actions voided any claim to certain assets, especially with the proof we have. And she was right. When the preliminary hearing came, the judge barely even listened to Emily's weak defenses. Your husband has provided clear evidence of your infidelity, he said, his tone stern. This is a serious breach of marital trust. It will be reflected in the division of assets. In the end, I kept the house, my savings, and my retirement fund. Emily was left with her car, a small portion of the joint account, and the burden of paying her own legal fees. But I wasn't finished. I knew Emily had been leaning on Jake financially, so I decided to throw another wrench into her plans. I reached out to Melanie again. Did Jake ever help Emily financially? I asked. Funny you should ask, she replied, her tone sharp. I just found out he took money out of our savings to pay for her rent and some weekend getaways. I almost laughed. Of course he had. Melanie wasn't one to let things slide. Within days, she'd filed a separate legal claim against Jake for misusing marital funds. Between her case and his unemployment, Jake was drowning in debt. I knew it was only a matter of time before his relationship with Emily crumbled under the pressure. As for Emily, she was struggling. Mutual friends told me she'd moved back in with her parents and was working overtime to stay afloat. She says you've ruined her life, one friend told me. Good, I replied without hesitation. She ruined mine first. The financial fallout was complete. Emily and Jake had lost everything they'd built together, and I wasn't done yet. With Emily's life unraveling and Jake cornered by legal and financial battles, I began planning my final move, a blow that would ensure neither of them could claw their way back into stability or escape accountability for what they'd done. The idea came from Melanie. I'm putting together a packet for Jake's family, she told me over the phone. Photos, emails, everything. They need to know who he really is. Maybe it's petty, but I want them to see the truth. Her plan inspired me. Why stop with their families? Why not expose them to every circle of influence they had left? Emily and Jake had humiliated me, betrayed me, and tried to paint me as the bad guy. It was time to make sure the people they respected knew the whole story. I started with Emily's workplace. Her probation at work had already put her on thin ice, but I had an ace up my sleeve. Among the emails I'd found, there were several exchanges between her and Jake discussing how they'd used company events to cover up their affair. I sent the emails anonymously to her HR department. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. Within a week, I heard through mutual friends that Emily had been fired for violating company policies. She's devastated, one friend said, her voice low over the phone. She keeps saying you're trying to ruin her life. I laughed bitterly. No, I'm just showing the world who she really is. Next, I focused on Jake. His situation was already dire. Unemployed, drowning in debt, and facing a lawsuit from Melanie. But there was one thing he still had: his family's support. Melanie and I coordinated our efforts. She sent Jake's parents the evidence of his affair, along with details about how he'd stolen money from their savings. I added my own commentary, highlighting the damage he'd caused not just to my marriage but to Melanie's as well. The response was swift and brutal. Jake's family cut ties with him, publicly disowning him on social media. His father's post was particularly scathing. We raised our son to be a man of integrity, but his recent actions have shown us otherwise. We cannot condone his behavior, and we will no longer support him financially or otherwise. I couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction as I read the post. Jake and Emily had burned so many bridges that they had no one left to turn to, not even each other. The final piece of my plan involved the broader community. Melanie and I worked together to distribute the story. Between her social media posts, leaked evidence, and whispers from mutual friends, Emily and Jake's affair became the subject of local gossip. Emily tried to salvage her reputation, but the evidence was too damning. Every denial she made was met with screenshots, photos, and videos. People stopped believing her. Jake, on the other hand, disappeared entirely. Rumor had it he'd left town, unable to face the mess he'd created. With everything in motion, I felt a sense of closure. Their reputations were destroyed, their finances in ruins, and their support systems gone. They were left with nothing but the consequences of their own choices. As for me, I was finally free. For the first time in months, I woke up without a heavy weight on my chest. The house was quiet. No Emily pacing the floor, no muffled phone calls or deceitful excuses. Just peace. It was a strange feeling, almost foreign after everything I'd endured. But peace doesn't rebuild a life. I took the first step by cleaning the house. It wasn't just about tidying up. It was about reclaiming my space. I tossed out anything that reminded me of Emily. Her clothes, her decorations, even the fancy espresso machine she had insisted on buying but rarely used. The act was cathartic, like clearing away the debris after a storm. Once the house was mine again, I started focusing on myself. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd lost during my marriage. Everything had revolved around Emily, her needs, her ambitions, her lies. Now it was my turn. I joined a gym, not because I wanted revenge abs or anything dramatic, but because I needed a way to channel my energy. The first few sessions were grueling, but with each drop of sweat, I felt a little stronger, a little more in control. Work became my second outlet. I threw myself into my projects, staying late at the office and volunteering for new opportunities. My boss noticed the change and pulled me aside one day. "You've been killing it lately," he said. "I know things have been tough at home, but whatever you're doing, keep it up." His words were a reminder that life could move forward, that I could rebuild, piece by piece. Socially, things were trickier. I had friends who had known both me and Emily, and some were hesitant to take sides. Others, however, rallied around me, inviting me out for drinks or casual hangouts. One night, over beers with my closest friend, Mike, I voiced something that had been nagging at me. "Do you think I went too far?" I asked, staring at the foam in my glass. "With Emily and Jake, destroying their lives like that." Mike didn't hesitate.
No.
"They deserved it. You didn't ruin their lives, they did. All you did was hold up a mirror." His words stuck with me. I hadn't acted out of malice or pettiness. I'd acted out of self-respect, refusing to let their betrayal define me. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, and even started therapy. The therapist helped me untangle the emotional mess I'd been carrying, teaching me how to move forward without bitterness. "Forgiveness isn't for them," she said during one session. "It's for you. You don't have to forget or excuse their behavior, but you do have to let go of the anger if you want to heal." It wasn't easy, but I tried. As the months went by, the storm of Emily's affair faded into the background. She tried contacting me a few times. Angry texts, desperate voicemails, even a tearful email claiming she'd changed. I ignored them all. Jake, as far as I knew, had vanished completely. Melanie and I kept in touch occasionally, exchanging updates and checking in on each other. She was thriving, focusing on her career and her kids. One day, she sent me a message. "Funny how life works out, huh? They thought they'd destroy us, but we're the ones who came out stronger." She was right. I was stronger. Months passed, and life finally began to feel normal again. The house no longer felt haunted by Emily's presence. My days were full: work, the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and the quiet evenings were no longer unbearable. One night, Mike convinced me to join him at a small local event. I was hesitant but agreed. The evening was relaxed, filled with laughter and music. That's when I met Natalie. She wasn't flashy or overly confident, just kind, genuine, and easy to talk to. We struck up a conversation that lasted all night, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of excitement. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was something better: hope. Natalie and I began seeing each other casually, taking things slow. I told her about my past, about Emily and the betrayal. She listened without judgment, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos I'd endured. "I'm not her," she said one night, sensing my hesitation when we talked about commitment. "And you're not who you were with her. This is different." Her words stuck with me. Slowly, I let my guard down, learning to trust again. Not just her, but myself and my instincts. With Natalie, there were no games, no hidden agendas. Just honesty. One evening, months after Emily had left, I received an unexpected email from her. It was long, filled with apologies and excuses, claiming she had made a mistake and wanted to meet to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I archived the message and moved on. I didn't need her explanations or her guilt. I had already found my closure, not from her, but from the life I was rebuilding. Emily was part of my past, and that's where she would stay. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Natalie and I grew closer, building a relationship founded on trust and mutual respect. I'd learned from the pain Emily caused, but I refused to let it define me. Betrayal had broken me, but it also rebuilt me into someone stronger. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through this, it's this: don't let someone's lies destroy you. Let them be the catalyst for your own transformation. I'm living proof that even after the worst betrayal, life goes on, and it can be better than ever.